A warm welcome to all our amazing viewers at Midnight Affairs Tales. We're truly glad you're here. Your presence is what makes these stories worth telling. We'd love to know where in the world you're watching from. Drop it in the comments. Now sit back, relax, and get ready. Let's begin today's journey. Chapter 1. It started with a letter, folded 3 times, slipped into an unmarked envelope, and left on the edge of the kitchen counter like a forgotten receipt. But Ethan Cole didn't forget things. Not anymore. He was up before dawn, as always. Old habits die hard when your body's been trained for 15 years to treat sleep like a luxury. The house was quiet, still soaked in that soft, gray silence before the world wakes up. Rachel was still asleep upstairs, or pretending to be. Ethan moved through the kitchen in perfect rhythm. Coffee, blinds, news, silence. That's when he saw it. No stamp, no return address. Just Ethan, in handwriting that wasn't Rachel's. He opened it with the caution of a man who'd once dismantled bombs in enemy territory. But what lay inside wasn't an explosive. Not in the traditional sense. She's cheating on you. Jim Guy, black Dodge Charger. License plate, VXR 105. Check Tuesday afternoons. Start with the Pilates class. No name. No signature. No bullshit. Ethan didn't flinch. Didn't curse. Didn't even sit down. He read it once, slowly. Then again. Then he calmly folded the letter and tucked it into the drawer next to the old Beretta he hadn't touched in years. 3 weeks earlier, Ethan had come home early from work. Tyler had canceled lunch last minute, and Ethan, figuring he could surprise Rachel, brought her favorite lunch from that overpriced vegan place she pretended to hate. But the moment he stepped inside, he felt it. The house was too quiet. Not peaceful off. A trace of perfume in the hallway, but not Rachel's usual floral crap. Something musky. Strong. Male. He heard the shower running. That wasn't odd. What was odd was Rachel singing. She never sang when he was home. He didn't go upstairs. He didn't ask questions. He just left the food on the counter and walked out. No confrontation. No suspicion. No accusations. That was the moment the Ethan Cole from before died. Back to the present. He didn't need to question the letter. He already knew. By noon, he'd run a basic trace on the license plate using an old police contact. Brandon Shaw, gym owner, ex-Marine, served in Iraq, medically discharged after 3 tours. Built like a fridge and known for sleeping with married women. Ethan knew the type. Rachel's type. He spent the rest of the day watching. Not just Rachel. Everyone. Tyler was the first call. You remember that old surveillance suite we used in Kandahar? Tyler didn't hesitate. You want the whole package? I want eyes everywhere, Ethan said. Inside, outside, digital audio. Everything. I'll handle physical access. You just make sure I see what I need to see. Tyler paused. You sure you want to go down this road, brother? Ethan stared at the wedding photo on the mantle. Rachel laughing. Him pretending. I'm not going down any road. I'm laying a trap. By Thursday, the cameras were in. 2 in the bedroom. 1 in the living room. 1 in the garage. 1 in Rachel's car. Tyler piggybacked into her phone and cloned it to a secure device. Messages. Calls. GPS. All of it. And Ethan waited. Friday afternoon, Rachel sent a text to B. Ethan read it from the clone device before she could even set her phone down. Same time, same place. I miss you already. Ethan didn't blink. At 1:12 p.m., Rachel pulled into the gym parking lot. At 1:17, Brandon arrived. At 1:23, they walked in together, her hand brushing his back. At 1:56, they didn't return from the private yoga suite, where Brandon hosted elite one-on-one sessions. At 2:47, they left. Smiling, she kissed him in the parking lot. No hesitation. No shame. Ethan was parked 1 block away. Watching. It wasn't rage that filled him. It was clarity. You don't spend 15 years in Black Ops without learning how to break someone without leaving fingerprints. And Ethan had no intention of confronting Rachel. Not yet. You see, revenge isn't about screaming or throwing things or begging someone to explain. Revenge is about patience. Revenge is about precision. Revenge is about building the perfect reality where the person who hurt you walks into their own destruction, thinking they're still in control. And Ethan had just begun laying the first brick. If this story has even slightly grabbed your attention, hit that subscribe button now. Your support means the world to me and keeps these stories alive. What's coming next will leave you speechless. Don't miss it. Share this with your friends so they can experience it too. Let's continue the story. Ethan watched the footage again. Rachel walked into their home just before 3:30 p.m., kissed their daughter Sophie on the forehead, tossed her gym bag into the laundry room, and made a salad. Like nothing had happened. There was no guilt in her step, no second thoughts in her eyes. She hummed while cutting cherry tomatoes, wiped her hands on a towel, and picked up the phone. "Hey babe," she said sweetly. "Yeah, Pilates was good. Kicked my ass today." Ethan stared at the live feed. Her lies didn't shake him anymore. They fueled him. He didn't blame Brandon. Men like him were wolves, always sniffing around for weakness. No, the real betrayal came from the one who smiled in your bed, wore your ring, and still chose to spit on everything you built. Ethan sipped his whiskey. He wasn't angry. He was calculating. The footage, the messages, even the old receipts. Tyler was already archiving everything. Every whisper, every kiss, every lie. By the end of the week, Ethan would have enough to bury Rachel in court, socially and financially. But that wasn't the goal. This wasn't about divorce. It was about undoing her. Saturday morning, Rachel suggested they go apple picking. A picture-perfect day in the countryside. Sophie in a tiny flannel shirt, Rachel in her Instagram-ready boots, and Ethan smiling behind sunglasses like the devoted husband. They posed for selfies, laughed over cider, watched Sophie ride a pony, the family that everyone envied. But Ethan wasn't taking memories, he was taking proof. Every smile Rachel posted online fed into her illusion. And every like, every comment, every "you two are goals" only made her fall deeper into the trap he was building. Because when it all came crashing down, she wouldn't just lose Ethan. She'd lose the story of herself. That night, Ethan asked casually, "You still doing those private yoga sessions?" Rachel didn't flinch. Brandon's really helping with my lower back stuff. He's ex-military, you know. Super professional." Ethan nodded slowly. "Ex-military, huh? What branch?" "Marine Corps, I think," she said, feigning vagueness. "I never really asked." Liar. He wanted to laugh. Or applaud. Because that was what made Rachel so dangerous. She wasn't just cheating. She was acting. Performing innocence with the grace of a Broadway lead. And it would be her downfall. Monday morning, Ethan called Maya Shaw, Brandon's wife. Estranged. Bitter. And, as it turned out, very willing to talk. He met her at a quiet diner off Route 7. She was younger than Rachel, sharper, with a resting scowl, an unlit cigarette between her fingers. "I knew he was sleeping with someone," she said without prompting. "But married? That's new." Ethan slid a photo across the table. Rachel and Brandon, her arms around his neck, his hand far too low on her waist. Maya stared at it. Silent. "I want to ruin them," Ethan said. No pretense. No filter. Maya's lips curled into a smile. "Then you're in good company." They talked for an hour. Maya had access, emails, financials, Brandon's daily patterns. She agreed to feed Ethan everything she had. In exchange, Ethan promised her one thing. Brandon wouldn't see it coming. Tyler came through with the digital toolkit, keyloggers, spoof accounts, mirrored cloud storage. Rachel's secrets were now open books. And what Ethan found wasn't just cheating. It was chronic. Hotel charges under fake names. Deleted texts from other numbers. Flirtatious messages going back years. Brandon wasn't the first. She'd been wearing masks longer than she wore her wedding ring. One entry hit him harder than he expected. "Can't believe you married him. He's like robotic. Do you even feel anything with him?" Rachel's reply: "Ethan doesn't feel. He calculates. Always has. It's like sleeping next to a machine." That line didn't hurt Ethan. It confirmed everything. She thought she knew him. thought she could manipulate him because he was calm, reserved, predictable. She had no idea who she married. By Friday, the plan was in motion. Step 1. Make Rachel think she's winning. Ethan started taking more business calls at dinner, pretending to be distracted. He forgot their anniversary date. Came home later. Gave her the space she craved. She thought he was pulling away. She thought she was safe. That weekend, Ethan suggested she take some time for herself. Even offered to watch Sophie so she could do a yoga retreat with her friends. Rachel took the bait. Gleefully. He watched her pack. Watched her text Brandon. Watched her lie again. Can't wait to be alone with you. He's getting suspicious. We'll talk plans this weekend. Plans? Ethan smiled. She thought she was planning something. She had no idea she was already living inside his plan. Saturday night, Ethan had dinner with Tyler in a rented apartment 2 blocks from the gym. Walls lined with screens, audio feeds, and floor plans. She's in, Tyler said. Same hotel they used last month. Room 311. Ethan nodded. Want me to prep the drop? Tyler asked. Ethan finished his drink and stood. No, we're not dropping anything. We're raising the stakes. He walked to the screen and pointed at the timeline. We let her dig deeper. Build her lie until it's airtight. Then, he drew a slow line across his throat. The next morning, Rachel texted, "You're the best, babe. This weekend was exactly what I needed. I feel so recharged." Ethan replied, "Glad you're happy. You deserve it." She had no idea those words would echo in her ears the moment everything shattered. Because Ethan wasn't done watching. He was just getting started. The human voice doesn't lie. It trembles. It cracks. It hesitates at just the wrong syllable. Ethan knew this better than most. Back in the field, a man could claim innocence all day long, but give him a phone, a headset, a bad signal, and 15 seconds, and you could hear his guilt right between the static. That's why he wasn't just watching Rachel. He was listening. Sunday evening, Tyler sent over the first batch of transcribed phone logs from the mirrored device. He'd intercepted calls, extracted voicemails, and even captured those half-whispers Rachel used when she thought Sophie was asleep in the next room. Ethan read every word. "Rachel, I know it's wrong, but with him it's always like strategy. Like I'm just a chess piece. Brandon, that's because he is playing chess, babe. You ever see how that guy looks at people? Like he's already figured out what they'll say before they say it. Rachel, exactly. With you, I can breathe. I can be myself. I don't have to perform." Ethan stared at the page, not with anger, but with precision. That line, "I can be myself," was the key. She believed Brandon was her truth, that she was living her real life in secret. And that was what Ethan would weaponize. That night, Rachel climbed into bed like nothing had changed. She curled up beside him, skin warm from a shower, smelling faintly of eucalyptus. Ethan kept his eyes on the ceiling. "You okay?" she asked softly. "Just tired," he muttered. She kissed his shoulder. "You work too hard." He said nothing. She rolled over, satisfied with the distance she thought she was creating, like she'd won some tiny victory. But Ethan was working on something far more devastating than a cold shoulder. He was building her new reality. Monday morning, he sent Maya a new drop location. A USB drive containing the latest footage. Brandon sneaking into Rachel's car at a park, Rachel laughing as she fed him bites of food in the front seat. One final video. Rachel leaning over the gym office desk while Brandon stood behind her, shirtless, mouth against her shoulder. Raw. Clear. Undeniable. Maya watched it all without flinching. "I want him to feel it," she said. "Publicly." Ethan nodded. "He will." Maya tapped her fingers against the table. "You ever wonder if they do this because they think we won't fight back?" Ethan looked her in the eye. They're about to find out just how wrong they are. Tyler, meanwhile, had cracked Rachel's private photo folder on her iCloud. 1,000 images. Many innocent. Some disgusting. Some humiliating. Ethan didn't even look through all of them. He didn't need to. The point wasn't exposure yet. It was leverage. And more importantly, it was about control. On Tuesday, Ethan played the long game. He brought Rachel flowers. told her she looked beautiful, cooked dinner, sat close, asked about her work, listened. He was, in every visible way, the perfect husband again. And Rachel? She melted into the act with such ease, it nearly broke Ethan's resolve. "I'm so lucky," she said, sipping wine and leaning into his shoulder. Ethan kissed the top of her head. "So am I." By midnight, she was asleep in his arms. And Ethan was uploading footage to a secure backup cloud, one that could destroy her entire life with a single shared link. Wednesday morning, he planted the next seed. A letter, just like the one he'd received weeks ago. Only this one was slipped into Brandon's locker at the gym. "She's not who you think she is. She's playing you both. Open your eyes." It wasn't signed. Didn't need to be. It wasn't about scaring Brandon. It was about planting paranoia. Because if there's one thing soldiers hate more than losing control, it's being lied to. By Friday, Rachel was glowing. She hummed around the kitchen again, made pancakes, wore her hair down, wore a red dress that Ethan hadn't seen in over a year. She kissed him before he left for work. "I was thinking, maybe we should go away soon," she said. "Just the two of us." Ethan smiled. "I'd like that." She beamed. And he knew. In that moment, she believed the lie. She thought Ethan was falling for her again. She thought her secret life was finally safe. But in reality, she was standing in a burning house, admiring the curtains. That night, Tyler sent a message. "Got something. Might want to hear this." He forwarded the audio clip from Rachel's call with Brandon. Rachel, laughing, "If he ever found out, I think he'd kill us both." Brandon, chuckling, "Let him try. I've handled worse." Rachel, "I'm serious. You don't know him. He doesn't explode, he waits." Brandon, "So what, babe? What's he gonna do? File for divorce and cry about it?" Rachel, softly, "No. He's the kind of man who would destroy me without ever raising his voice." Silence. Then Brandon's laugh. "Damn, you're really scared of your husband, huh?" Rachel, "I used to love that about him." That was it. That was the moment the performance cracked. Rachel knew Ethan was watching. She didn't know how. She didn't know when. But somewhere, deep in her bones, she knew she'd crossed the wrong man. And now, she was starting to feel it. The weight, the tension, the dread. Ethan stared at the transcript and exhaled slowly. She had just described him perfectly. He wasn't going to scream. He wasn't going to confront. He was going to destroy, from the inside out. And when she realized what he'd done, how far it had already gone, it would be too late to scream. The net was tightening. The story was shifting. And in 2 days, she'd walk into the trap thinking it was just another kiss behind closed doors. Ethan already had the guest list, the location, the date, the cameras, and the final words she'd ever say as a wife. Sunday morning arrived like a calm before a long overdue storm. The air in the Cole household felt still, too still. Rachel buzzed around the kitchen in a robe, humming a 90s pop song while frying eggs. Sophie sat at the counter drawing horses with pink crayons. Ethan sipped his black coffee, eyes on the newspaper, but ears everywhere. Every smile she gave him, every glance she tossed over her shoulder like a trophy wife playing her role in a suburban play, only fed the machine Ethan had built piece by piece. Today was not about her. It was about why. Because in war, and this was war, you never strike without understanding the terrain. And Rachel was just the visible enemy. To win, Ethan needed to know how deep the infection ran. Later that day, Ethan met Tyler in a parking garage under an abandoned office building in Reston. They used to debrief here, years ago, when coming back from missions too classified to be written down. The air still smelled of mildew and gasoline. Familiar, quiet, anonymous. Tyler handed him a thumb drive. "I got into her deleted email archives. Used your old signal trick to bypass the restore flag." Ethan pocketed it. "Anything interesting?" Tyler nodded. "Let's just say Rachel's been more than a flirt. She's been running a pattern." Ethan said nothing. Tyler continued. "For years ago, guy named Darren Shepard. Realtor. Married. Lasted 6 months." Ethan's jaw tightened. "Then a fitness coach. Sean Lemire. 2 years ago. Shorter, 2-month fling. Any crossover with Brandon? Ethan asked. Tyler nodded slowly. Timeline overlaps. First text to Brandon was during the last month of Sean. Rachel likes to overlap exits and entries, like clearing a room before moving on. Ethan leaned against the concrete column, staring into the dim light of the exit sign. This isn't about Brandon, he muttered. It never was. That night, Ethan dug into the emails. Every accidental meetup, every flirtation just for fun, every lie she wove into her digital trail revealed something deeper. Rachel wasn't just cheating out of boredom. She was addicted to the performance, to the secrecy, the seduction, the power of having a life hidden in the shadows, while Ethan kept the lights on above ground. And yet she always came home, because home was safety, reputation, resources. Ethan wasn't a man to her. He was a platform, a stage. And Brandon? He was just another rehearsal. The next day, Ethan visited an old contact, Colonel Mason Briggs. Retired now, but back in the day, Mason had been Ethan and Tyler's commanding officer, an iron-spine strategist with a deep dislike for sentiment and weakness. They met at a VFW hall in Alexandria, where Mason played poker on Tuesdays and drank bourbon that could strip paint. You look like a man with a plan, Mason said as Ethan sat down. Ethan stared at him. I need your opinion on something psychological. Mason smirked. So, you finally hit a problem you can't shoot through. Ethan pulled a photo from his jacket. Rachel, smiling, champagne in one hand. Brandon's arm wrapped around her waist. Mason raised an eyebrow. The wife. Ethan nodded. Soon to be an ex. But before that, she needs to feel it. Mason's face stayed neutral. You're looking for justification or tactical support? Tactical. Mason leaned back. All right. You've got surveillance. Intel. A disloyal asset. What do you want to accomplish? Shame. Loss. Isolation. Total collapse, Ethan said calmly. Mason exhaled. Then don't hit her once. Hit her 3 times. Financial. Social. Psychological. Remove the mask. Take away her tribe. And leave her looking at herself with no story left to hide in. Ethan nodded once. The old playbook. Disarm. Disorient. Destroy. Step 1. Financial destruction. Rachel had joint accounts. She didn't know Ethan had removed her access to 3 of them last month. Nor did she know that Maya, Brandon's wife, had frozen his business accounts by filing an emergency marital asset petition that morning. Step 2. Social exposure. Tyler created a throwaway email address and began feeding anonymous tips to 2 gossip pages Rachel followed religiously, along with a batch of blurry leaked images of her with Brandon outside a hotel. Step 3. Psychological detonation. That was the masterpiece. And it would unfold during the Grant family barbecue, scheduled in 6 days. A neighborhood tradition, one where Ethan and Rachel were the golden couple, all smiles, perfect daughter, perfect lawn, perfect life. It would be the stage, and she wouldn't know she was standing center spotlight until it was far, far too late. But first, he needed her off balance. And Ethan knew exactly how to do it. The next morning, Rachel received an email from an anonymous account. Subject line, who you really are. Inside, a single sentence. You're not good at hiding. Ask Brandon about Redfield. He'll explain. Rachel froze. The cameras caught her reaction, eyes locked on the screen, pulse in her throat, lips slightly parted. She deleted the email in 5 seconds. 30 seconds later, she called Brandon. Rachel, did you tell anyone about us? About Redfield? Brandon, confused. What? No. What's going on? Rachel, someone knows something. They emailed me. Brandon, what did it say? Rachel, just to ask you. Silence. Brandon, it's probably your husband. Jesus, do you think he knows? Rachel, I don't know. He's been calm. Too calm. And that was when fear began to bloom in her chest. Because Rachel had played with boys before. But Ethan wasn't a boy. He was a man trained to destroy entire regimes with silence. That night, Rachel came to bed late. Ethan pretended to be asleep. She stood in the doorway longer than usual, staring, thinking, maybe, for the first time, fearing. And Ethan let her stew in it. Let her carry that growing weight like a ghost under her skin. Because once the barbecue came, the final act would begin. The neighbors would be watching. The friends would be gathered. And Rachel? She would still be smiling. But underneath that smile would be the unraveling of a woman who thought she was untouchable. Ethan had fought in deserts where the sun peeled your skin off, and every shadow could hide a sniper. He'd survived extraction missions under blackout protocols and interrogations that broke lesser men. But nothing prepared him for the surgical precision required to destroy someone emotionally, without ever raising your voice. This wasn't revenge by gunfire. This was warfare by erosion. Slow, invisible, merciless. It was Wednesday, 2 days before the Grant family barbecue. Rachel's behavior had changed. She wasn't humming anymore. She triple-checked her phone for notifications, turned the sound off when Ethan walked into the room, and jumped when their daughter dropped a spoon at dinner. She'd started locking the bathroom door again. She'd started wearing makeup around the house. And when Ethan offered to pick up Sophie from school, she paused too long before saying sure. She didn't trust him anymore, which meant the poison was working. But not enough. Not yet. Tyler sat across from Ethan at a quiet rooftop bar in downtown Arlington, laptop open, camera feeds live, keyboard warm. She's burning calories trying to clean her trail, he said, scrolling. Deleted messages, VPNs, even tried searching how to wipe iCloud data remotely. Sloppy. She's nervous. Good, Ethan said. Let her panic. Tyler leaned in. You still sure about the barbecue plan? Ethan didn't blink. It's poetic. A public betrayal for a private one. Tyler smiled, but there was a hesitation in his voice. You know, some people would just divorce and move on. Ethan looked out over the city. They weren't married to Rachel. Friday came. The day of the barbecue. Ethan woke early. He made pancakes for Sophie, took the trash out, even helped Rachel pick the dress she'd wear. A soft lavender sundress. She twirled in front of the mirror. You think it's too much? He kissed her forehead. You look beautiful. She smiled. But he saw the flicker of uncertainty behind her eyes. It was almost sad. Almost. The Grant family barbecue had always been a circus of upper-middle-class pride. Perfect lawns, fresh off the grill burgers, dad jokes, and forced laughter. Everyone brought a dish. Everyone smiled too hard. Everyone judged each other behind aviator sunglasses. This year, it was being hosted at Ethan and Rachel's house. And Ethan had rigged the stage. Cameras were set. Audio feeds embedded in the patio speakers. Tyler had written a script that would autoplay from a phone nestled in Ethan's pocket, triggered at the perfect moment, through the Bluetooth connection disguised as music. The file was called Rachel.mp3. Guests arrived at 3 p.m. sharp. Brandon showed up around 4:15 p.m., alone. He wore a tight gray polo and the swagger of a man who thought he was playing chess. Rachel excused herself from a conversation with Karen Adler and practically floated toward him, whispering something under her breath. Ethan watched from the grill. Calm. Steady. Waiting. At 5:20 p.m., the moment came. The patio was full, about 30 guests, including neighbors, co-workers, even Rachel's boss, Principal Hendricks. Rachel had just refilled drinks, laughing, holding a tray of deviled eggs. Ethan walked over to the speaker, pressed a discreet button on his phone, and let Rachel.mp3 play. I'm serious. You don't know him. He doesn't explode, he waits. Rachel's voice, crystal clear, amplified through the speaker system. She froze. Everyone turned. So what, babe? What's he gonna do? File for divorce and cry about it? Brandon's voice now, slightly smug. A few people chuckled, awkward, not yet understanding. No, he's the kind of man who would destroy me without ever raising his voice. Gasps. Rachel dropped the tray. The deviled eggs exploded on the patio stones like grenades of shame. Damn, you're really scared of your husband, huh? I used to love that about him. then silence. Heavy, unforgiving. Rachel's face turned ghost white. Brandon just stared at the speaker, then at Ethan, then at Rachel. The crowd? Whispering. Eyebrows raised. Phone's already out. Ethan stood in the middle of it all, calm as a statue. "Thank you all for coming," he said, loud enough to carry. "Dinner's inside. Unfortunately, my wife and I will no longer be co-hosting." Rachel took a step toward him. "Ethan," he turned to her, smiled, and walked away. Inside, Rachel followed. "Ethan, what the hell was that? You ambushed me in front of everyone." He turned slowly. "You lied to me. Repeatedly. You endangered our daughter's stability. You thought I wouldn't find out. I didn't mean." He stepped closer, voice still low. "You didn't mean to get caught." She broke then. Fully. Tears welled. Shoulders trembled. That innocent voice returned. The one she used to manipulate men into second chances. "Please, Ethan, don't do this. We can fix it. We can." But he cut her off with 3 words. Deadpan. Final. "I already did." Upstairs, the cameras were still rolling, recording her tears, her panic, her slow realization that the image she'd crafted so carefully was collapsing in real time. Ethan wasn't angry. He was finished. She tried to grab his arm. "Please," he pulled away. "You spent years lying to me," he said. "Now it's time for you to tell the truth to everyone else." Rachel's lip trembled. "You set me up?" Ethan tilted his head. "No, I just let you reveal yourself." Tyler wiped the footage to an encrypted drive. Within hours, copies were ready for Ethan's lawyer, Maya Shaw, and Rachel's workplace. Rachel had a morality clause in her contract. That lavender sundress would be the last thing she wore in that school. That night, after the guests had left and the house fell into an eerie quiet, Rachel sat on the kitchen floor, shaking, mascara smudged, staring at the front door like it had betrayed her. Ethan tucked Sophie into bed, kissed her goodnight, and packed a single duffel bag. As he passed the kitchen, Rachel looked up at him like a prisoner awaiting sentencing. "You're really going to leave?" she whispered. Ethan paused in the doorway. "I'm not leaving." Her breath hitched. "I'm just letting you stay," he added coldly, "in the mess you made." Then he walked out, not to escape, but to prepare the final blow. Because this war wasn't over. Not until Rachel begged. The fallout was immediate. By Sunday morning, 3 of Rachel's co-workers had unfollowed her on Instagram. By Monday, Principal Hendricks called her in for a confidential conversation that ended with the word suspension. A week later, the school district placed her under review for violating professional conduct due to reputational concerns. The story had spread fast. A leaked clip, only 20 seconds long, circulated among local parents like wildfire. Rachel's voice, Brandon's laughter, and Ethan's cold delivery, it was enough. She tried to spin it. Tried to play the hurt wife, the victim of a malicious ex-husband and a cruel internet. But the internet had already chosen its villain. And villains don't get sympathy. Meanwhile, Ethan was silent. Gone from the house. Not legally separated. Yet, but absent. He'd rented a quiet apartment downtown. Bare walls, mattress on the floor, no distractions. Just strategy. Tyler called it the ghost move. Disappear. Let them spiral. Let them chase you. And Rachel was spiraling fast. She called Ethan 12 times in 3 days. Texted, emailed, left voicemails that ranged from sobbing apologies to rage-filled threats. But Ethan didn't reply. He didn't need to. She was already inside the trap. Now all he had to do was tighten it. Step 1. Isolation. Ethan had always been the anchor of Rachel's world. Responsible. Grounded. Stable. Now that anchor was cut, and she was drifting. Friends stopped responding. Family, unsure what was true, withdrew politely. Brandon vanished. According to Maya, Brandon had gone completely dark. His gym closed for maintenance, his phone disconnected, and his social media scrubbed. Rachel had no one left to lie to, no one left to perform for. Just her, the empty house, and the echo of her own mistakes. And Ethan made sure she could hear every last one. Step 2. Paranoia on Thursday. Rachel received a text from an unknown number. Do you ever regret it? Or do you still think you're in control? No name. No context. Just that. She called the number. Disconnected. She tried to block it. It reappeared. An hour later, a manila envelope arrived on her porch. Inside, 6 printed photos. All of her. Candid. From the past 3 weeks. One at the grocery store. One filling gas. One holding Sophie's hand outside school. One entering the gym. One leaving Brandon's apartment. And the last, her in the bedroom, half naked, smiling into a mirror, unaware of the tiny camera mounted inside the smoke detector. She collapsed on the floor when she saw it. She called Ethan, shaking. He didn't answer. But she knew. He was watching. And that was what broke her. Because Rachel could handle being hated. She could handle exposure. But she couldn't handle invisibility. She couldn't handle knowing she was being studied, broken down, outmaneuvered. Every room felt like a cell. Every mirror felt like a witness. She tore the smoke detectors down, threw out her phone, changed her locks. It didn't matter. The damage had already been done. Step 3. Hope. Ethan waited until Saturday to send his first and only message. Let's meet. Sunday, 9 p.m. Just you and me. Same place we met the night I proposed. Rachel stared at the screen for 5 full minutes. Her hands trembled as she typed back. Yes. Please. I'll be there. That Sunday evening, Rachel stood outside the old overlook off Skyline Drive. The valley stretched wide below, stars creeping in overhead, and the quiet hum of crickets painting the silence. She wore the same coat from the night he'd proposed, trying to evoke a memory, trying to reverse time. She waited for 10 minutes, then 20, then 45. No Ethan, no headlights, no message, just a small box nestled under the bench. She spotted it after an hour. Inside, a flash drive and a note. You've told enough lies. Now hear the truth. She drove home in a panic, slammed the door behind her, and plugged the drive into her laptop. A folder opened. The Rachel archive. She clicked it. Videos. Hundreds. Stamped, sorted, labeled. Texts. Screen recordings. Voicemails. Photos. GPS logs. Everything. Every lie she ever told. Every secret she ever whispered. Every moment she thought no one could see her. All organized. Curated. Delivered. Then a final video file. Why you lost everything.mp4. She clicked it. Ethan's voice filled the room. Low, calm, clear. Rachel, this isn't about cheating. Not really. That was just the trigger. What this is exposure. You manipulated. You deceived. You pretended. Not once, but as a pattern, a system. And I let you. Not because I was weak, but because I was patient. Every moment I smiled at you was a moment I studied you. And every time you thought you were ahead, I was 10 steps further. This drive is a copy. The original is with my lawyer. Another is with Maya Shaw. If I wanted to, I could ruin you completely. Financially, professionally, socially. But I won't. Because I want you to live with it. I want you to see what you've become. And know I saw it all. This was never about revenge. It was about truth. Goodbye, Rachel. She sat frozen for hours. Couldn't move. Couldn't breathe. She tried calling him again. Voicemail. Again. Voicemail. She messaged Tyler. Blocked. She called Maya Shaw. Straight to voicemail. She was alone. Truly, completely alone. The next morning, she showed up at Ethan's apartment. Barefaced. Hair disheveled. Eyes bloodshot. She knocked once. No answer. She sat on the floor outside the door like a lost child. Whispered through the crack. Please, Ethan, please. I'm sorry. No sound from inside. No mercy. She curled up, knees to her chest, shaking. Inside, Ethan sat in silence, watching her through the peephole. Not with satisfaction. Not with joy. With closure. She wasn't crying for forgiveness. She was crying because she finally understood. She had never been in control. And now, she was no longer even a player in the game. She was just a lesson. One he'd spent years preparing to teach. And she hadn't learned it yet, because there was still one more twist. Rachel stayed outside his apartment for over an hour. At first, she paced. Then she begged. Then she whispered like he was a ghost haunting the hallway. A hollow voice muttering old vows and new regrets through the door Ethan refused to open. He didn't need to, because the lens mounted above the door caught every second. The audio recorder inside the fire alarm caught every word. The mic under the floor mat picked up the cracking in her voice, the shattering tremble of a woman who no longer recognized the silence she'd once mocked. Ethan didn't blink, didn't move, didn't interfere. He simply recorded, because Rachel had spent years building lies. Now she would live inside truth. After she left, broken, red-eyed, clinging to the railing like it might forgive her, Ethan sent a simple file to Tyler. File name, doorstep_confession.mp4 caption, archive this. For later, Tyler texted back with one word, done. That same night, Ethan accessed the backup cloud. His system, nicknamed Shadow Cell, had grown into a digital beast, painstakingly organized, time-stamped, triple encrypted, and mirrored across off-grid servers. It housed everything. Rachel's full phone logs, her real-time GPS tracking over a 6-month span, all synced audio files from cameras in the house, voice samples used to isolate emotion, tone, and deception patterns, psychological profiles based on her written communications. Ethan didn't just watch her. He mapped her. He understood her behaviors better than she did, knew her triggers, her defaults, her manipulations. And now, he was preparing to turn that understanding into her mirror. Because the final trap wouldn't be explosive or loud. It would be quiet, clean, and perfectly orchestrated. Rachel's downfall so far had been private ruin dressed in public embarrassment. But she still believed she had some control left, that she could perhaps rebuild, explain it away. She'd convinced herself Brandon was a mistake, that Ethan still cared deep down, that the damage, while brutal, could still be reversed. That hope? Ethan would suffocate it. Step 1. Control the narrative. Ethan didn't want to just destroy Rachel's reputation. He wanted to take ownership of her story. So he created a new email. Pseudonym, Jade McAdams 91. Local mom blogger. Bio, single mom, trying to heal from betrayal. He began posting on relationship forums, parenting groups, Reddit threads, all perfectly curated with clips, timelines, emotional hooks. Posts titled, "My best friend slept with my husband, and it was my wife. She smiled while cheating, then cried when I exposed her. Why my daughter deserves to know the truth, not the lie her mom lives." People ate it up. Sympathy flooded in. Comments exploded. TikToks were made analyzing the story. Anonymous internet detectives began piecing things together from public profiles and leaked images. Without ever using her name, Rachel became infamous. People recognized her at gas stations, whispered at grocery stores. One teenager even recorded her walking into a CVS and uploaded it with the caption, "Is this her?" The replies said it all. Yep, that's the wife from the barbecue video. She cheated on a black ops vet? Bro, what did she think was gonna happen? Honestly, she's lucky she's still breathing. Rachel disabled her social media 2 days later. But it was too late. The internet doesn't forget. Step 2. Force the reflection. Ethan had one final piece to deliver. A gift. He scheduled a delivery to Rachel's front door. A black box, plain, tied in silk ribbon. Inside, a tablet. The screen booted automatically into a single looping video file. Title, "You Unfiltered." Rachel tapped it with shaking hands. The screen went black. Then her face appeared, caught on hidden camera, laughing on the gym couch, whispering to Brandon in the car, mocking Ethan on the phone, calling her marriage a routine she's outgrown. Then her voice, again and again, saying, "He's too calm. It's creepy. I don't even feel guilty anymore. If he ever found out, he'd ruin me." Then silence. And finally, Ethan's voice. "One last message. This is the last lie you'll ever hear. Your own." The screen faded. Rachel collapsed on the floor. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She just sat there, completely still, like a woman who finally saw the prison cell built from her own reflection. Maya Shaw called Ethan that night. "She's done," she said. "I've never seen someone fall so fast without a single legal document." Ethan replied, "Good. She was never worthy of the court's time." Brandon. Hiding. Coward's instinct. Maya hesitated. "And you? Is this enough?" Ethan stood by his apartment window, watching headlights pass below. "She took 5 years of my life. My trust. My name." Pause. "I gave her back 5 months of pain. Measured. Controlled. Surgical." He exhaled slowly. "I call that fair. But it wasn't over. Not completely. Because Rachel still believed Ethan was finished. That he'd exhausted his anger. That she could now begin to move forward. So she made a call. To a lawyer. To explore her rights. And to inquire whether she could reclaim partial ownership of Ethan's joint assets. That was her final mistake. Because now, she was trying to win again. Trying to play the game Ethan had created. And the moment he heard about that call, he didn't flinch. He didn't sigh. He just looked at Tyler and said, "Release protocol Ashfall." Tyler stared at him. "All of it." Ethan nodded once. "All of it." The next day, the first true public leak began. Anonymous sources. Verified court-friendly documents. Allegations backed by time-stamped evidence. Rachel wasn't just a cheater now. She was a compulsive manipulator with psychological red flags and a paper trail of duplicity. The story no longer belonged to her. It belonged to the truth. And it was Ethan who wrote it. Every line. Every consequence. Every ending. All recorded. All remembered. Because she never saw the cameras watching. The neighborhood hadn't recovered. Not from the video. Not from the whispers. Not from the tension still hanging in the air like the smoke of a battlefield days after the last shot was fired. The Grant family barbecue, once a happy memory for suburbanites craving community, had become legend. People still talked about it in hushed tones. "Did you hear what he did? That poor man. How strong he must be." She had the nerve to show up afterward. Rachel had become a ghost in her own street. Children stopped waving. Neighbors who used to gossip with her at the mailbox now crossed the street. She'd been socially executed. But Ethan wasn't done. Not yet. Because her real punishment wouldn't come from strangers or reputational damage. It would come when she realized. She'd been dismantled from the inside out. It began again at the source. Ethan walked through the same front door of the house they used to share. Calm, composed, announced by nothing more than a soft click of the lock. Rachel looked up from the couch, stunned. A flash of fear, hope, confusion. "Ethan," he looked at her. Measured, cold, but not cruel. He set a thick envelope on the coffee table. She stared at it like it might detonate. "What is it?" "Everything," Ethan said. "The house. The accounts. Custody. Sign it and I'm gone. No media, no lawsuits, no war." Her lips parted. "Custody? Full custody." Rachel blinked hard. "You're taking Sophie?" Ethan's voice remained neutral. "No. You're giving her up. You just haven't admitted it yet." Rachel's hands trembled as she opened the envelope. Inside was the brutal truth she hadn't expected. A full forensic audit of her financial betrayals. Timestamped GPS logs showing her leaving Sophie unattended during meetings with Brandon. Witness statements from Brandon's gym staff, confirming their knowledge of the affair. Video clips, cleaned and legally framed, of her cursing at Ethan during arguments. Subtle, consistent emotional degradation. And most damning, a transcript of a phone call from weeks ago. Rachel, laughing, "She's better off with him honestly. I'm a mess. I can barely take care of myself right now." Presented under oath, it would be enough. The judge wouldn't even blink. Rachel stared at the papers, her hands shaking. You've been preparing this?" Ethan didn't answer. His silence was louder than any scream. "This is evil," she whispered. He finally turned to her, voice level. "No, this is justice. Evil is pretending to love someone while eroding them one day at a time." Rachel's jaw tightened. "You planned this." Ethan nodded. "Every step. Every exposure. Every word. You played games with trust. I played chess with time. The next part shattered her. Because then he handed her a photo. It wasn't a scandalous image. It was a still frame. Rachel, curled on the floor, sobbing at Ethan's apartment door. Her knees drawn up, her mascara smeared, her voice caught mid-beg. "You were recording that?" she whispered. "Yes." "Why?" Ethan met her gaze without flinching. "Because someday, when you lie to someone new, when you pretend to be something you're not, I'll have this. And if I choose, I'll remind them who you really are." She lunged at him then, slapped the envelope off the table, screamed something, an incoherent string of desperation and venom. He let her scream. He didn't react. She stood panting, crying, shaking. "Do you hate me?" she asked finally. Ethan's answer was a whisper. "No." "Then why are you doing this?" "Because I loved you. And you turned that into ammunition." He left the room without another word. But before walking out, he paused at the door. "You wanted control," he said. "Now you have none. You wanted to rewrite reality. Now the truth has the pen. This isn't vengeance, Rachel. It's a mirror. You don't like what you see? That's not on me." That night, Rachel didn't sleep. The cameras, now fully disconnected, weren't there to see it, but Ethan could feel it. She would be unraveling. She would be staring at the walls, the ceiling, the ghosts of every lie she'd told. She would hear Ethan's voice in her head. She would wonder who else knew, who else watched, and most importantly, what else he had in reserve. Tyler sent the message the next morning. Brandon cracked. Apparently, after the fallout, Brandon tried to quietly reopen his gym under a different name in North Carolina. But someone anonymously sent city officials the original lease agreements, the fake LLC registration, and footage of Brandon breaking a restraining order filed by Maya. His new gym permit was denied. He was now broke, exposed, and sleeping in his car. Checkmate number 2. Then came checkmate number 3. Ethan filed an official complaint with the school board using an anonymous attorney liaison. It contained emotional misconduct allegations, boundary violations with students. Rachel had confided in one of them about her horrible marriage. The full digital trail of personal affairs conducted during work hours. Rachel's temporary suspension turned permanent. She was fired. No fanfare. No statement. Just a removal of her photo from the school website. And another silent deletion from the world she once commanded. But the real twist? Wasn't professional. Wasn't legal. It was emotional. Because after all of it, the shame, the loss, the collapse, Rachel still clung to hope. And Ethan knew it. He knew her better than anyone. He knew she still believed there might be a final act of forgiveness. That one night he might show up again. Maybe after the dust settled. Maybe after the silence grew too long. Maybe after the pain twisted back into nostalgia. So he left her one more gift. A locked box. No name. No note. Just left on her doorstep. Inside, a single photograph. Ethan and Sophie, laughing together on the beach, hair tangled in the wind, joy unfiltered. On the back, a message in Ethan's handwriting. "We're building a new life. One without lies." That was it. Nothing else. No second chance. No maybe. Just truth. Unforgiving. Absolute. Final. And Rachel? She wept harder than she ever had. Because this was the first time she understood she had lost the game. Not because she was outplayed, but because she never even knew the rules. It had been 23 days since the barbecue. 13 days since Rachel lost her job. 8 since the final court mediation had ended in Ethan's favor. Full custody granted, primary house awarded to him. All accounts split down to the cent with surgical precision. But it was the silence that hurt her most. There were no more leaks. No more cryptic texts. No more gifts or footage or traps. Just nothing. No calls from Ethan. No updates about Sophie. Not even Tyler watching from across the street anymore. Rachel didn't know it yet, but that silence was the final move. Because silence was where guilt grew fastest. Where people's thoughts turned in on themselves. And Rachel had no one left to interrupt the echo. She still lived in the guest house now, Ethan's terms. The main property was his. The law said she could remain in the detached unit for 45 days. It might as well have been a coffin. The air was stale. She didn't cook anymore. Didn't bother cleaning. She barely looked in mirrors now. Couldn't handle what stared back. Her phone lay face down on the counter. Cracked screen, no messages. But she still checked it. Every hour. Just to see if maybe, just maybe, Ethan had sent something. An insult. A closure. Even hate would have been better than the void. Across town, Ethan sat in his new office. Hardwood desk. Clean walls. A single photo on the shelf. Him and Sophie at her school art show, covered in paint and laughter. Tyler stood at the window, watching traffic. She hasn't tried anything legally, Tyler said. No motions. No appeals. She won't. Ethan replied, flipping a folder shut. She's scared. Ethan looked up. No, he said quietly. She's empty. That's what he'd built. Not revenge. Not ruin. But hollowing. A precise surgical extraction of every illusion Rachel had clung to, leaving behind the bare skeleton of a woman who had relied on lies for warmth. And now, there was nothing left to burn. That evening, Rachel stepped outside her tiny back porch. The main house glowed gently in the distance. Warm. Alive. Sophie's giggles echoed faintly through the yard. Ethan was barbecuing. Friends were over. It smelled like home. Her home. But she was no longer invited in. Not even as a guest. She stood at the edge of the grass, watching, half in shadows, barefoot, wearing a hoodie too big for her shoulders. Sophie spotted her through the window. The girl hesitated, then waved. Rachel lifted her hand in return, tears in her eyes. But Ethan stepped in view, gently pulled Sophie away, and closed the curtain. No anger. No cruelty. Just a boundary she would never cross again. Rachel sat on the porch for hours after that. The breeze brushed her skin, but she didn't move. Because the worst part wasn't that Ethan was happy. It was that he didn't need her anymore. And deep down, she had always believed that despite the betrayal, despite the collapse, he would. That somehow, her voice still mattered in his world. But Ethan had proven her wrong. Not through hate, but through removal. A week later, a letter arrived for Rachel. Handwritten. No envelope. Just left in the mailbox like a whisper. She read it once. Then again. Then again. You used love as a mask. I used silence as a weapon. You broke something sacred. I rebuilt it without you. And now the version of you that lied, cheated, and smiled through it all, that version is dead. I buried her. You're welcome. E. She tore the letter in half. Then into quarters. Then smaller pieces until they slipped between her fingers like dust. But the words wouldn't leave. They echoed in her head for days. I buried her. I buried her. I buried her. And maybe, she realized, maybe he had. Because Rachel wasn't who she used to be anymore. Not the charming PDA wife. Not the desired seductress. Not even the misunderstood victim. Now, she was just a silhouette of the woman she'd pretended to be. And everyone could see it. Even her. Ethan didn't attend the divorce finalization hearing. Didn't need to. His lawyer showed up, handed over the agreement, and left within 10 minutes. Rachel walked out alone. No paparazzi. No scandal. Just rain. Cold, steady, quiet. She sat in her car, hands on the wheel, engine off, eyes blank. And for the first time since the entire collapse began, she whispered aloud, I lost. Not in anger, not in denial, but with the broken breath of someone who finally understood what they'd done. Ethan received the report the next morning. Tyler forwarded it with the subject line, Closure, in case you care. It was a security scan from a private investigator Ethan had paid in advance, just in case Rachel tried anything. But she hadn't. She hadn't gone to the press, hadn't reached out to Sophie's school, hadn't filed appeals. She'd just stopped. A final page was attached. A grainy photo. Rachel sitting at a cafe. Alone. Hair tied back. No makeup. No laptop. No books. Just a coffee. And silence. Ethan stared at it for a moment. Then deleted the file. Without a word. Without a second glance. Because the war was over. Not with an explosion, not with a scream, but with a whimper from the soul of someone who realized the truth too late. And that truth bled not in courtrooms, not on social media, but in the quiet, in the nights alone, in the glances that didn't come back. Truth doesn't need applause. It only needs to be heard once. And Rachel? She'd heard it, loud and clear. Rachel hadn't left the guest house in days. The blinds remained drawn. The fridge was half empty. Even the power bill had gone unpaid until the final notice arrived. She didn't answer her phone. She didn't answer the door. There were no more plans. No more distractions. Just reflection. That slow, brutal kind that doesn't offer comfort, only mirrors. She had once lived in the main house, a queen in her castle. Now, she was a tenant in exile, living on borrowed time. And the eviction clock was ticking. Across the yard, Ethan didn't watch her anymore. He didn't need to. The cameras had been disabled. The surveillance shut down. Protocol Ashfall had done its job. Everything he wanted her to know, she knew. Everything she had to feel, she was feeling. The final phase wasn't about evidence or confrontation. It was about absence, letting her live with what she'd done, without interference, without saving her from the consequences. Ethan sat quietly at his kitchen table as Sophie showed him a crayon drawing. It was the three of them. Mommy, Daddy, Sophie. But Rachel's figure had no face. Just a blurred circle where eyes and a mouth should be. Why doesn't Mommy have a face? Ethan asked gently. Sophie frowned. I forgot what she looks like when she's happy. He didn't correct her. He just kissed her forehead. And knew, for the first time in a long time, Sophie was going to be okay. Meanwhile, Rachel tried to write a letter. To Ethan, then to Sophie, then to herself. But the words failed her. Everything sounded like manipulation. Everything sounded like a trick. Because now, she realized, that's all she'd ever known how to do. Spin, twist, deflect. She wasn't a communicator. She was a tactician of falsehoods. And now that she had no one left to lie to, she had nothing left to say. She opened her laptop, one of the few items she hadn't sold, and clicked into an old folder marked Favorites. Inside were pictures of vacations, birthdays, kisses on the beach, even Ethan, blurry from laughter, holding Sophie on his shoulders. Moments she had believed were too safe to lose. Moments she never thought would be used as evidence against her. She double-clicked one video. Her voice came through, smiling, happy. Say I love you, Daddy. Sophie's voice, I love you, Daddy. And then her own giggle, high-pitched, genuine. She slammed the laptop shut and sobbed, not for the marriage, but because that version of her, the one who wasn't lying, cheating, calculating, was dead. And she killed her. That same day, Maya Shaw received a voicemail. Rachel, hi. I know I'm the last person you want to hear from. I'm not calling to fight. I'm not calling to deny. I know you gave Ethan everything, and I deserved it. But if you ever see him, tell him, silence. Tell him I understand. Click. Maya didn't return the call. She simply forwarded the message to Ethan. He listened once, deleted it. No emotion. Not because he didn't care, but because she was finally where she needed to be. 3 days later, a letter arrived for Rachel. Certified mail. Signed and stamped. Final notice. Vacate premises. She had 14 days to leave the guest house. Ethan had waited longer than necessary. The court gave him the right to evict the moment the divorce finalized. But he gave her space. Time. Now, that grace was over. She had no job, no savings, no family willing to help, and no place to go. She tried calling Brandon. Disconnected. She tried reaching out to an old coworker. No reply. She was, at last, what she had made others feel, disposable. The final straw came from a friend she hadn't spoken to since the barbecue, Olivia Reed, a paralegal who once adored Rachel, the one she used to brag to, manipulate, confide in. Rachel texted her, "Can we talk? I don't know where to go." Olivia replied 10 minutes later, "You went too far. I can't risk being connected to this anymore." That message, 16 words, hit harder than any court document. Rachel dropped the phone and stared at the wall. It wasn't anger that filled her. It was something worse. Clarity. For the first time, she believed she had done this to herself. There was no more room for blame. No more justification left to dig up. The night before the eviction deadline, Rachel walked to the front of the main house. She didn't knock. She just sat on the steps like a memory that hadn't faded yet. Ethan opened the door, not surprised. Sophie stood behind him, small hands gripping his shirt. Rachel looked up, eyes red, hair windblown, skin pale. "I'm leaving tomorrow," she whispered. Ethan didn't speak. "I just wanted to see her one last time." Sophie stared at her mother like she was a stranger on the street. Rachel's voice cracked. "Hi, baby." Sophie said nothing. She just tightened her grip on Ethan's hand. That silence said everything. Rachel stood, nodded once, and walked away. She didn't sleep that night. Just packed. A suitcase, 2 garbage bags of clothes, and a small jewelry box full of memories she didn't deserve to keep. She left behind a single envelope, taped to the fridge in the guest house. Ethan found it the next morning. He didn't open it. He didn't need to. He simply tossed it in the trash. Because forgiveness isn't something Rachel earned. And some apologies don't deserve an audience. Betrayal doesn't always end in blood. Sometimes its price is isolation. Sometimes it's waking up every day knowing that the person you fooled the longest no longer sees you at all, that your voice carries no weight, your face sparks no warmth, your presence is no longer welcome, and your absence goes unnoticed. Rachel left town in a rented car. No destination listed. No forwarding address given. She disappeared the same way her lies once did, quietly, thoroughly, without ceremony. And Ethan? He didn't look for her. He simply closed that final chapter and turned the page to a life that no longer included betrayal, deception, or Rachel. 6 months passed. The leaves turned. Summer heat gave way to cool winds and burnt orange trees. The neighborhood healed. Gossip faded. Life marched forward, as it always does after disaster, stepping around the ashes like they were never there. But Ethan hadn't forgotten. He didn't live in the past anymore, but he remembered it with discipline. He remembered what betrayal had cost him. More importantly, he remembered what it had taught him. Because revenge had never been about destruction. It was about balance. And now, justice wore a familiar face, his own. Ethan had become a father first, soldier second. But somewhere in between, he learned that wars aren't always fought on battlefields. They're fought in bedrooms, in family courts, in polite dinner conversations with veiled accusations and buried lies. And when betrayal comes from within, you don't fight it with fire. You fight it with silence. You outmaneuver it. You endure it. Then you erase it, methodically. Today, Ethan wore a new uniform. Not camouflage, not Kevlar, but a pressed button down, sleeves rolled, a faint smile at the corners of his mouth as he sat across from his attorney in a quiet office downtown. Maya shot past him a slim folder. "It's final," she said. "Every dotted I, every crossed T. The property, custody, reputation, you hold all of it. And more importantly, you hold it clean." Ethan opened the folder. The last paperwork. A legacy scrubbed of Rachel's name. Maya added, "No appeals filed. No counterclaims. No noise from her end at all." Ethan nodded. "She knows it wouldn't matter." Maya hesitated. Then, softly, "Do you want to know where she is?" Ethan closed the folder slowly. No, Rachel had disappeared somewhere along the Appalachian corridor. The PI had traced her as far as Roanoke, living under a new name, working part-time at a bookstore, renting a room above a diner. No social media, no phone records, no contact. She wasn't hiding from Ethan. She was hiding from herself. Ethan could have pressed the advantage, sent footage to her new boss, leaked the story again, haunted her with one more blow. But he didn't. Not because he was merciful, because he was finished. The real punishment was living with herself. And she was doing exactly that. Meanwhile, Ethan was rebuilding. His company, once a security firm for corporate clients, had pivoted toward a new frontier, helping betrayed spouses document and defend themselves legally, emotionally, digitally. He called it Echo Shield. The motto? Truth leaves a trace. Tyler ran the tech infrastructure. Maya served as legal advisor. And Ethan? He served as the architect, the man who knew exactly what it felt like to have the earth ripped out from under you. They didn't advertise, didn't market. Clients came quietly, whispered through recommendation and desperation. And every time someone walked through the door with eyes full of disbelief and pain, Ethan met them with calm. He told them what they needed to hear. You're not crazy. You're not weak. You're not alone. And in those moments, he didn't just teach them how to gather truth. He taught them how to heal through it. But not everyone healed. Not Rachel. Because one cold Wednesday in February, she came back. Not to town, but to court. A quiet filing. A motion to re-establish limited visitation rights. A desperate, last-gasp move wrapped in legal paper. Maya sent Ethan the scanned file with the subject line, "She's trying." He read the first paragraph, then closed the tab. Let her try. At the court hearing, Rachel showed up wearing a black blazer 3 sizes too large, sleeves fraying at the cuffs. Her hair was tied back tightly, makeup minimal. She looked smaller, like time had crushed her into a quieter version of the woman who once posed confidently at cocktail parties and flirted over martinis. She didn't look at Ethan. Not once. The judge reviewed the documents. Read the previous decisions. Scan the evidence logs. And then, with calm finality, denied the motion. Rachel didn't argue. She just nodded once, lips pressed together, eyes wet. Then stood, turned, and finally met Ethan's eyes. Just for a second. No anger. No hatred. Just recognition. The look of someone who saw the man behind the justice and knew he'd never stop watching. Not with eyes, but with memory. Outside the courtroom, Ethan waited for a moment, then walked past her. No words exchanged. But as he stepped into the hallway, Maya asked, "What if she tries again?" Ethan looked out the window. The light hit his face just right. Sharp, unwavering, clear. She won't. How do you know? Because she finally saw who she was fighting. That evening, he read to Sophie before bed. She clutched her stuffed fox, giggled as he used the silly voices, and leaned against him without fear. Her world was whole now. Clean. Safe. Built on truth. And Rachel? She was no longer a monster to defeat. She was just a ghost that Ethan had already outlived. Justice doesn't always arrive with sirens or verdicts. Sometimes it comes through patience, through preparation, through choosing to fight on a battlefield your enemy doesn't even see. And when that justice wears your face, you don't gloat, you don't brag, you just live, unbroken, unafraid, and completely in control. It was nearly a year to the day since Ethan received the first anonymous letter, the one that started everything. The lies, the cameras, the trap, the collapse. Now he stood at the edge of a quiet playground, watching Sophie swing back and forth beneath a late spring sun. Her laughter rang out, innocent and free, while 2 other kids chased bubbles nearby. It was peaceful, unburdened. The world had shifted, and Ethan had stepped into a chapter Rachel never thought he'd reach, peace without her. He hadn't heard from her in months. After the failed custody plea, Rachel vanished once more. No filings, no texts, no calls. Ethan had stopped checking. He didn't wonder where she was anymore, because there was nothing left of the woman who once wore his ring. Only a version of her existed now, in archived folders and sealed legal documents. A version forever frozen in betrayal. But people like Rachel don't disappear forever. Not truly. And on a Wednesday afternoon, with clouds looming and wind sharp, she came back once more. Not in a courtroom, not in his inbox, but in person. Ethan opened his apartment door to find her standing there. Rachel, thin, pale, a shadow, dressed in layers 2 seasons too old, her hair wet, her shoes worn. She didn't speak at first, just looked up with wide, red-rimmed eyes. "I'm not here to ask for anything," she said finally. I needed to tell you something." Ethan didn't respond. He didn't let her in. She stood in the hallway like a stranger at confession. You were right, she whispered. About all of it. About me. About what I did. She trembled. I ruined something that was good. I became everything I said I hated. And I hurt the only two people I ever truly had. Silence stretched between them. I've been living with it, she said. The silence. The shame. It doesn't go away. Her voice cracked. I thought time would fix it. That maybe you'd forgive me eventually. But now I know it's not about time. She stepped back. It's about truth. And what truth costs when you spend years running from it. Then she did the one thing Ethan never expected. She bowed her head, hands shaking, voice broken, and whispered, I'm sorry. Ethan stood in the doorway, unmoved. Not out of cruelty, but out of clarity. She wasn't asking for forgiveness. She was asking for relief. And he wasn't the one who could give it. He let the silence speak for him. Rachel nodded slowly, understanding the message buried in it. This wasn't forgiveness. This was finality. She turned and walked down the hallway, her footsteps small and fragile, fading like the memory of a lie you finally stop repeating to yourself. And Ethan closed the door. That night, he sat beside Sophie again, this time watching her sleep, a night light glowing softly nearby. He didn't need victory. He didn't need applause. He had the only thing that mattered, a life untouched by deception. And that was the revenge no one saw coming. Not public destruction, not prison, not death, but living well, with nothing left to prove, and no one left to fear. Rachel never returned again. No more letters. No more calls. Some said she moved up north. Others said she checked into a clinic. Some believed she changed her name entirely and started over. But Ethan? He never chased the ending. Because when you've already won, you don't need to look back. You just keep walking. And if this story gripped you, if it made you feel something deep, anger, satisfaction, justice, then help us grow this channel. Subscribe for more intense, cinematic revenge stories. Like if you believe in justice that hits harder than words. Comment what shocked you most about Rachel's downfall. Share this story with someone who loves a plot where the villain doesn't get away with it. Because here, truth always finds its voice.